What's up, everybody? Welcome to Zephbug Experience. My name is Aiden, and this is Movie Mondays. I want to say right off the bat, if you're watching this video and you watched the last video and you have eyes, then you know last week I lied to you. I fully intended on covering Infinity War when it came out, but somehow it came out much sooner than I realized. Like, I knew the date it was coming out, and I still just forgot to decide to cover that one. But we're covering it today. So next week, aliens. Aliens. Anyways, strap in, everybody. This one's gonna be a doozy. I want to start by saying, full disclosure, I am a Marvel fan. I've liked most of the movies they've put out, but I actually expected to go into this one being pretty disappointed, but I didn't find myself to be. So let's talk about that first. Movies as an art form. There's a pretty common phrase that a lot of critics hear, and especially YouTube critics I've found, called turn off your brain. The phrase is said most frequently when a critic has a negative opinion towards a movie or thing that somebody in the audience likes. The problem with that phrase, it is inherently stupid. Whether you like or dislike a film, the fact that you can form coherent opinions and sentences about it, whether positive or negative, relies purely on the fact that during the film you do not turn off your brain. The appreciation you may have for a film relies entirely on the fact that when you are watching the film and see something that you like, you go, oh, yeah, I like that. The thing is film is an art form, and how you perceive it and how you see it relies entirely on your personal preference. That's the theme for this first part of the video, is personal preference. A lot of people will see movies and say that it was pretentious or made me think too much, but just because you didn't like a film or it wasn't what you were looking for out of the medium doesn't make it inherently bad. Adam from YMS actually summed this up pretty well in episode 6 of the Sardonic cast, but essentially, if you want to critique a film, there are only a finite amount of things that you can measure objectively based on its effectiveness. A minor and simple example of this being, if a camera's out of focus, we can say, well, that was bad. The camera was out of focus the whole time, I couldn't see anything. And if the movie has glaring plot holes, why am I expected to give the writers or directors a pass for laziness? But a lot of movies rely on how you relate or personal connections you draw to the film. An example of this for me would be Lady Bird. Lady Bird had a lot of okay things, the writing, some of the acting, but I mean, when I saw it, I was going through a lot of that growing up myself, so I drew a lot of personal connections to it and therefore liked the movie a lot more. We need movies we don't like to have movies we like. If you're into movies that have little story but lots of action, but then every film coming out was like that, then you would find some subgenre of those type of films or something about certain films that you didn't like that would make you like some films better. Nobody will ever like every movie that comes out. And this sort of ties into another point. We need to pay more attention to what the director's intent was versus what we as an audience member expected or wanted out of a movie. I know this happens in like every movie video I do, but there's a couple arguing out in the hallway. Just witness the domestic, huh? If you are into movies with these big action scenes and little story, why bother going out to movies that set out to be more profound or meaningful through the story and then just complain about the fact that it wasn't this big action movie? Like I said before, we need movies we don't like to have movies we like. Not every piece of art is set out to revolutionize or evolve the piece of art or medium that it's put through. The best example I could think of this was people who commission for YouTube avatars. I mean, they put a lot of hard work into them, but they're not out to evolutionize or revolutionize, YouTube avatars. But this is sort of where it ties back into Marvel for me. Marvel had started as a company set out to make these big action movies, but over time, as the MCU sort of started, it evolved and became something different. I think this is a major reason why as the universe grows, the movies keep getting better. Whether it be coherent and cohesive storytelling or even smaller things like just making sure that every character, including villains, matter. So now, after that rambling, I'm gonna jump into the movie. And before you click off because you haven't seen it yet, I'm gonna split this part into two parts. The first one being just me talking about my feelings on the movie with no spoilers, and the second part being that spoilerly goodness we all want. Don't fear not though, I will thoroughly warn you before the spoilers come. So here we go. So let's talk about the CGI of the film. I don't know, looked like a Marvel movie. Most of the CGI was, competent, but there were a few things that looked sort of weird. Like there was one character in the movie who was green screened in to be bigger than he actually was in real life, and that looked really bizarre. The script was really good. I think the different parts of the film, really flowed together nicely, and I think this is probably one of the hardest I've ever laughed at a Marvel movie. The chemistry between characters after spending so much time together was pretty nice, and even the quips they were making between each other landed pretty well. Plus, even though they had 40,000 characters, they were even able to fit in some character development, so. I saw a lot of people complaining before the movie came out that the movie was 2.5 hours long, but like, what did you want? There was a lot of characters in this movie. I think they had a hard enough time fitting as many as they did into the time that they did. But okay, something that I really want to talk about since I saw the movie earlier today was goddamn the strong female characters. Look, I get it. Wonder Woman had the female-led movie, but the characters in this movie, look, I get it. That movie was led by a movie. All the praise came from it being led by the movie, but have you seen this movie? Marvel has had badass female characters for years, and look, I get it. They didn't lead the movie, but goddamn, they were always so badass. All right, ladies and gents, this is your warning. If you want to hear my final thoughts with no spoilers, skip to the timestamp in the description. This is the spoiler warning. Before you watch any further, go watch the movie. I can't stress this enough. So first, let's talk about the story of the movie. This movie is the beginning of the end for the story arc that we've been watching for years. And this movie follows pretty much Thanos as he's collecting the Infinity Stones to wipe out half of humanity, or whatever, or half of the universe, and becomes ever more powerful with each one. A quick sidetrack is I just want to say I love how Marvel is able to world build in really small ways that just keeps on adding up into big ways. A really great example of this is in the very beginning of the movie. We're reminded that Tony and Pepper plan on getting married. And while it's not, a revelation because it was something that was told to us at the end of Homecoming, it's something that definitely sticks with us later on when, Stark is face to face with Thanos. The movie follows several different storylines in this film, and I'm gonna try to keep them all straight for you. I won't spend too much time talking about this though, because if you're watching right now, that means you've seen the movie, hopefully, and talking about it like this could probably get kind of confusing. I thought the way a lot of characters met up was pretty intelligent, and I thought most of it made sense. Like, I was never like, yeah, but why would they do that? It did seem a little bit convenient that the Guardians were the ones who received Thor's distress signal, and they were the ones who rescued the Asgardians. But I wasn't, distracted by it. It really didn't come to me until after the movie. Like, I wasn't in the movie like, that just takes me out. I just can't watch anymore. Huh. And in the beginning, I did think it was really weird how Strange immediately picked Tony to go to after Bruce fell through the sky. I guess we're to assume that, Bruce told him to find him, or maybe Strange is just oddly familiar with Tony's accolades in fighting aliens. But then I feel like they would have added some Stark quip about, oh, so you've seen my trophies, rewards. I get both of those things are pretty nitpicky, but the whole Strange Stark thing could have just been fixed if after Bruce fell through the sky, instead of going, Thanos, he's coming, and instead he just went, Thanos, he's coming, Stark. And Strange would have just been like, yes, I've heard he has quite the trophy room of alien killing. Then the audience would have laughed, but not like one of those like haha laughs, but like one of those laughs where like you jut your head back and smile and breathe through your nose. Splitting up the Guardians later in the movie also made a lot of sense. Like, they really paired the Guardians well with who they fit well with in the universe itself. One thing I really liked about the movie is that it was essentially just us following Thanos around while he kicked everyone's ass and gathered the Infinity Stones. I guess it makes sense contextually though, because Thanos had motive to go to each of these locations, but it did seem somewhat convenient that he was always there at the same time everyone was. So not every character got character development in this movie, which is fine, because honestly there were some characters where I just didn't care about seeing their development. And also, if we gave every character a reason to develop in the movie would be like 9 hours long. But there were some really cool small things that they did that weren't necessarily character development, but showed something about character. Like how Moody Teenage Groot throughout the whole movie is just this, teenager who doesn't care and is playing his video games. But then when Thor needs him, he steps up and shows how selfless he still is. Obviously for him, it wasn't a huge sacrifice, but it still said something. And also Thor, I think there's a big difference between the Thor we see in Ragnarok and the Thor we see in most of the Marvel movies. Tony Stark had some pretty interesting character development in this movie, even if it wasn't completely actualized in this movie itself. He's a character we're really familiar with, and that's why smaller changes to him will impact us more than characters like, say, T'Challa. A really small change in him we won't notice nearly as much as we do in Tony. This was a pretty smart move by Marvel, really choosing who they gave the bigger character developments to compared to the small ones in this movie. For me, the relationship between Tony and Peter has always been a really cool one. In the end, while a lot of people lost a lot of people they cared about, Tony held Peter while he was dying, only what we can assume was hours after knighting him into the Avengers. And as unceremonious as it was a big deal for Peter, and now this person he looked up to, this mentor he had, is holding him while he dies. Peter is still saying Mr. Stark and Sir to him in his last moments of life. Over the course of 18 years and 10 films, it all started with Tony. And while he started as this smug asshole, he became this charismatic leader. And he's engaged, and now this kid who looked up to him and he was a mentor to is dying in his arms. I definitely think that's setting a precedent for what's to come for him. When we were originally introduced to the Hulk and Bruce Banner, they were this person and this thing, this monster, this killing machine. And now, and of course in Ragnarok, they became these two different characters that have these personalities in this unique relationship. The Hulk now seems to be forming opinions and feelings about things separate from Bruce Banner, and it's not just don't make him angry anymore. It's strange that now that this information that we have, we can think back onto older films like when Bruce Banner said he tried to kill himself and the Hulk spit the bullet back out. It makes those lines mean something a little different. And look, I'll be honest, I don't know if the original comic book writer was the one who came up with this idea, or if it was one of the screenplay writers who did this, but having the Hulk become a character was just, it was a good thing, hats off. Originally, when we were introduced into Vision and the Scarlet Witch, they had much different roles in the universe. Does she have a real name? Can't believe I don't know this. Wanda was originally set up as a villain in Age of Ultron, but of course, we know by the end of the movie, she becomes part of the Avengers. It's hard to talk about Vision and Wanda separately from each other now, though, because their storylines directly correlate. They affect one another. As it was previously set up, Vision and Wanda are now in love, and they're with each other in Scotland, and we're first back introduced to them with them arguing with one another, trying to get them to refrain from going back and fighting bad guys. It's this really weird back and forth. One will be like, stay, and the other one will be like, I don't know, and then 10 seconds later, it's the other way around. And of course, because writers know how interesting it is to watch these two superheroes have this argument back and forth, they get attacked and are ultimately dragged back into the war they were just talking about not getting involved in. The whole relationship arc is concluded at the very end when we have to watch Wanda kill Vision in order to destroy the Mind Stone. It held a really interesting dynamic and tension between the two characters from when it was introduced for the duration of the film. I thought what really sold this sequence for me was the performance by Elizabeth Olsen. She, for me at least, really made me feel every second of that. I think by far the most surprising character development we got though in this film was from Thanos. Recent Marvel movies have had this great upward trend of making villains relatable and interesting and complex. It was crazy to me that he was set up all the way back when Marvel was still doing the beam of light kind of villain, and then I actually ended up kind of caring for him when he ended up having to kill Gamora for the Soul Stone. Placing little snippets throughout the film of Gamora as a child and when Thanos first met her really made that scene more than just a bad guy does another bad guy thing. Thanos' motives were expanded on a lot in this movie, and I thought it was great. Thanos going from a faceless, but not like literally, I mean like figuratively faceless. It was great seeing him going from this faceless villain to this person who actually had motives and had a reason why. I don't know. I just thought it was still refreshing that a real character existed in a movie. So what's next? Well, Marvel movies are planned all the way until like the year 2022. Well, I think it's really cool that they're building this complex universe where in the future they could have several Avenger-type stories going on at once with these complex situations. I think they're shooting themselves in the foot by slating these movies. An example, you ask? Well, Avengers 4 is set up to come out May 3rd of 2019, and then Spider-Man starring Tom Holland, who just died in this movie, is coming out July 9th of 2019. It's 2 months. 2 months after the Infinity arc is supposed to end, and the character who just died, he's supposed to be back. I really hope they don't bring back every character who died in the movie. I think it would make sense. I think it would be cool if they brought back some of the characters if it made sense, but I think that bringing back all of them would just sort of put a damper on what they've achieved. I think having people actually for real permanently die is a really big step in the right direction for the MCU. My final thoughts. Hey, welcome back, person who hasn't seen the movie yet. I thought Infinity War was a really awesome movie that is built upon what Marvel has been doing for years. Of course, it's a movie setting up another movie, but that's just the nature of what a cinematic universe has to be. If movies weren't setting up for the universe, what would it be? Because it wouldn't be a universe. Every movie, even the standalone ones, are now setups for future movies. The Guardians of the Galaxy movie, that at first had nothing to do with the rest of the MCU, came together and was in the end a setup for the MCU. Think about that one. This upcoming Ant-Man film is going to lead into something that completely determines whether or not he has an appearance in the next Infinity War movie. I'm sure of it. And look, I'm gonna be told I'm part of the problem. I'm gonna be told I'm perpetuating mediocrity in cinema, but I think that's stupid. There will always be more filmmakers and other artists who don't wanna just make another Hollywood blockbuster, who don't wanna just make YouTube avatars. There will always be people who are looking to evolve and expand upon a current art film, and I don't think we should be putting movies down just because you don't believe they're contributing to that. And besides, isn't Marvel? Okay, look, I hear comic movies are compared to Western movies a lot, and how eventually everyone will get bored and will just die out, but I don't necessarily seeing that happen. Western movies, given the context that they were in, was a finite amount of stories. There were cowboys, there were Indians, there were good guys, and there were bad guys, and they came out in a time when the only thing anyone wanted to see was a guy who was tough as nails and was the best shot in the West. But comic books create their own context. With the universe they've built, they can literally do anything. It's been established that there are different planets, there are different dimensions. They aren't stuck in 4 states. This is why I said before, I really want to see Marvel kill a character and keep them dead, because if they don't, then yeah, that's just going to be good guys versus bad guys over and over again, and they're going to get westerned out. But I think Marvel is paving the way for an entire genre and giving them room to grow, especially with movies like Deadpool and Logan. Marvel has almost mastered the idea of using every movie to set up another movie while still giving us cohesive plots and firm ideas. But it's a process, and isn't that what evolution is all about, is learning and going through that process? I'm really excited to see Marvel movies continue to grow and cultivate what they've made. And I'm not talking about just necessarily comic movies in general, but the idea of a cinematic universe. Of course, I mean, you could argue that X-Men did it first, but that's a different video entirely. People forget that Infinity War is the completion of Marvel's biggest, most ambitious story arc yet, and people are acting like they have to do it perfect the first time. And I just think that's unfair. Like I said, it's a learning process, right? I think as long as Marvel decides to give the reins to people who have passion and care about the projects and have some level of talent, the format will continue to evolve, and as long as it evolves, it won't die out like Westerns. They're the first group of people who have done this as well as they have, and I think it's going to be a while before we get another company who are willing to put passionate people behind this project and are willing to take the time to do this as well as they can. But whatever, that's just my opinion, I guess. I mean, let me know down below, leave a comment down below what you thought. Oh, and Aliens next week. Don't forget. Thanks, you guys.